You have heard this sentence before, maybe many times, maybe your whole life, but you never heard it the way you are about to hear it now. Because Jesus was not pointing to heaven above you, he was pointing to a dimension inside you, a field, a frequency, a state of consciousness where the boundaries of the physical world begin to bend, a state where identity dissolves and something larger takes over, something that modern physics is only now beginning to describe, something the mystics always recognized but could not name, a state where you are no longer separate from creation. You become part of the intelligence that shapes it. This was the message hidden in plain sight. Christ was not trying to teach you how to believe. He was trying to teach you how to access, how to enter the same state of coherence that allowed him to speak and reality responded, to touch and probability reorganized, to intend and the field obeyed. You were told these were miracles. But what if they were not exceptions? What if they were demonstrations of the true nature of consciousness? What if Christ was not showing what he could do? He was showing what you can become, what you already are before the world convinced you otherwise. The life of Jesus makes sense only when you see him not as a religious figure, but as a blueprint for human potential, a map to a state of being where fear cannot exist, where the mind becomes quiet, where the heart synchronizes with the field, and where you tap into the power that has been inside you since the beginning. Today, you will see Christ through the lens of quantum physics. And the truth is simple. He was not describing a God above you. He was revealing the God state within you, the quantum field and the inner kingdom. When Jesus spoke about the kingdom of God being within you, he was not referring to a symbolic place. He was pointing to an inner dimension that modern physics now calls the quantum field. The field is not physical. It cannot be touched or seen. Yet everything you touch and everything you see arises from it. It is the invisible layer beneath your reality. It is the ground of all possibility. It is the space where probability becomes form. And according to both ancient wisdom and quantum science, this field does not exist outside of you. It exists through you. The quantum field responds to states of consciousness. It mirrors intention, identity, and emotion. It does not listen to words. It listens to coherence, which means the state you hold within is the command you send to the fabric of reality. This is why Jesus emphasized inner alignment over external action. He knew that creation begins on the invisible level long before it appears in physical form. Carl Jung understood this truth from another angle. He taught that the self, the deepest center of your psyche, is not just your individuality. It is a spark of universal consciousness, a reflection of the total. Jung believed that the self is the Christ principle inside you, the organizing intelligence that unites your inner world and communicates with the greater field. In Jungian psychology, when you access the self, you enter a state of wholeness where your inner and outer realities begin to align. Jung called it individuation. Jesus called it the kingdom. Both were speaking about the same phenomenon from different languages. When you turn inward and align your identity with your highest state of consciousness, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel connected to something larger. Your thoughts quiet. Your emotions stabilize. Your intuition becomes sharper. The field becomes more responsive. You enter a state where the separation between you and creation dissolves, and the reality around you reorganizes according to the frequency you emit. Quantum physics explains that everything is energy vibrating at different frequencies. Christ explained that everything is possible to the one who believes. Both point to the same principle. Your internal state shapes the probabilities around you. Your coherence determines what becomes real. Your alignment determines what materializes. When your heart and mind enter harmony, you broadcast a signal strong enough to influence the field. This is consciousness interacting with possibility. This is observer effect. This is creation through identity. And Jesus embodied this principle perfectly. He did not pray for power. He did not beg for miracles. He entered a state where the field responded naturally. The kingdom within him shaped the world outside him. This is the inner kingdom, not a place, a frequency. A state of being where you become aware that you are not separate from the field. You are the field. And when you align with that truth, creation flows through you effortlessly. The observer principle. Whoever believes, everything becomes possible. One of the most misunderstood statements Jesus ever made is also one of the most powerful. If you believe, all things are possible. People interpreted this as religious faith, as blind trust, as hoping hard enough for something to happen. But Jesus was not speaking about hope. He was describing a principle of consciousness that modern physics now calls the observer effect. He was explaining the way reality responds to inner certainty, He was revealing how your state of being collapses possibility into form. In quantum physics, the observer effect shows that a particle exists in multiple potential states until it is observed. Once consciousness interacts with the field, the wave collapses into a single outcome. Observation shapes reality. Consciousness decides the form. This is not philosophy. It is measurable. And it is the same principle Jesus was pointing to when he spoke about belief. Belief is not thinking something is true. It is embodying a frequency so deeply that your entire being aligns with it. Belief is coherence between your mind, your heart, and your identity. When Jesus said that faith can move mountains, he was speaking about the power of aligned consciousness to reorganize probability itself. Mountains move when the internal resistance dissolves. Reality shifts when you shift. You experience this on small scales all the time. When you expect something negative, your body contracts. Your perception narrows. You notice every detail that confirms your fear. In that state, the field reflects your inner limitation. But when you enter a state of clear inner certainty, something else happens. Your body relaxes. Your perception opens. You begin to attract possibilities that match your internal frequency. The field reorganizes around your coherence. Jesus demonstrated this alignment in every miracle attributed to him. He did not ask whether something was possible. He operated from the identity of someone who knew possibility responds to consciousness. He did not attempt to control matter. He shifted the frequency from which he observed it. When he said, "Your faith has made you whole," he was not referring to belief in him. He was referring to the internal state of the person, their coherence, their alignment, their internal collapse of probability into healing. This is the true meaning of belief, not wishing, not hoping, becoming. Your state becomes the instruction you give to the field. Your identity becomes the lens through which reality organizes. Your coherence becomes the force that collapses possibility into experience. This is why you cannot manifest from doubt. Doubt is not a lack of faith. Doubt is an opposing frequency. The field reads vibration, not words. When you understand this, the message of Jesus becomes extraordinarily clear. He was not teaching superstition. He was describing the mechanics of reality. He was explaining how consciousness interacts with the quantum field. He was revealing the secret hidden in plain sight. Reality bends to the one who fully believes because belief is alignment, and alignment collapses possibility into form. The I am identity as the quantum key. When Jesus said, "I am the way," he was not pointing to a personality. He was pointing to a state of identity, a frequency, a consciousness that rises above the limited self and speaks from the deepest truth of existence. In spiritual language, this is called the I am. In quantum language, this is the frequency of pure being. And when you understand this, you begin to see that the I am is not a phrase. It is a creative command. Identity is the strongest signal you send into the quantum field. It is stronger than thoughts, stronger than emotions, and stronger than intention. Your identity is the vibration you occupy without trying. It is the state you return to when you stop performing, pretending, or controlling. It is your baseline frequency. And this baseline frequency tells the field who you believe yourself to be. Jesus understood this profoundly. When he said, "I am," he was aligning with the purest expression of consciousness. He was speaking from the level where separation no longer exists, where the observer and the observed are one, where intention and manifestation arise from the same source. This is the state where reality responds instantly because identity and creation are no longer divided. Quantum physics shows that everything in the universe vibrates at a specific frequency. Nietzsche understood this from a different angle when he spoke about becoming who you truly are. To him, the highest human was not someone who believed more. It was someone who transcended the small self, someone who rose above limitation and acted from a deeper identity. In this way, Nietzsche and Jesus were speaking about the same transformation, the shift from the ego self to the essential self, from the conditioned identity to the true identity. The I am is the true identity. It is the awareness behind every thought, the presence behind every emotion, the consciousness observing every experience. When you operate from this place, your frequency becomes coherent. Your intention becomes pure. Your emotions harmonize. You stop trying to create reality from force and begin creating it from state. The ego says, "I want." The soul says, "I am." And the quantum field responds to the latter, because the field does not read desire. It reads identity. When you say, "I am abundant," the field does not respond to the words. It responds to whether your state matches the frequency of abundance. When Jesus used the I am, he spoke from absolute coherence. His identity matched his intention. His frequency matched his words, and the field responded instantly. This is the key. You do not manifest through wanting. You manifest through becoming. You change your reality not by chasing it, but by shifting the identity from which you observe it. The I am is not affirmation. It is embodiment. It is the collapse of the limited self and the emergence of the consciousness that Christ revealed. When you live from this identity, the field no longer resists you. It recognizes you. Miracles as the reorganization of probability. People often describe the acts of Jesus as miracles, moments where the laws of nature were suspended, moments where something impossible interrupted the ordinary flow of reality. But from the perspective of consciousness and quantum physics, what you call a miracle is simply a shift in probability. It is not the breaking of nature. It is the fulfilling of its deepest laws. It is the moment when a higher level of coherence reorganizes the field. In the quantum world, nothing is fixed. Everything exists as potential. Every outcome is a probability. And the one who interacts with the field determines which probability becomes real. This is where Jesus operated, not from belief that something might happen, not from desire that something should happen. He operated from the identity where the highest possibility was already true. He did not force the field. He aligned with a frequency strong enough to collapse it. When modern physicist David Bohm spoke about the implicate order, he described a hidden layer of reality where all possibilities exist simultaneously. A deeper order beneath the visible world. A unified field where everything is connected in ways the mind cannot perceive. Jesus lived from this layer. When he healed, when he multiplied, when he calmed, he was not intervening in matter. He was interacting with the deeper order behind it. To the people around him, this looked supernatural. But to the field, it was natural. The field responds instantly to coherence, and Jesus embodied perfect coherence. His heart and mind were aligned. His identity was centered in the I am. His frequency was pure presence. There was no doubt inside him, no contradiction, no internal resistance. In this state, the field bends like light around gravity. Probability reorganizes the moment coherence appears. A miracle is what happens when the frequency of the observer becomes stronger than the inertia of the current reality. It is what happens when the internal state of being becomes more dominant than external conditions. Jesus never argued with reality. He never resisted it. He never asked whether something was possible. He spoke from the level where possibility is unlimited. He acted from the level where consciousness commands form. This is why he said, "It is done," not "it will be done." Not "I hope it happens." He spoke from completion, not from desire. Completion collapses probability, desire prolongs it. The moment you speak or act from the frequency of completion, you enter the same mechanism. The field begins to reorganize around your certainty. Your emotional signature becomes the blueprint, and reality follows. Nothing miraculous violates physics. It reveals physics. It reveals the deeper truth that consciousness shapes matter. It reveals that probability is not random. It responds to identity. It reveals that when you align with the Christ state inside you, you begin to experience shifts that look impossible to the mind but natural to the field. A miracle is not an exception. It is alignment. It is coherence. It is the natural expression of a consciousness that remembers its source. Elevated love as a spiritual technology. One of the most powerful teachings of Jesus was also one of the most misunderstood. When he spoke about love, he was not talking about emotion. He was not talking about affection or kindness alone. He was describing a frequency, a state of consciousness, a level of coherence where the heart becomes a transmitter strong enough to influence matter and reorganize the field around you. Love, in its highest form, is not a feeling. It is a technology of the soul. Modern research confirms this. The electromagnetic field of the heart is far stronger than the field of the brain. When the heart enters a state of elevated emotion such as gratitude, compassion, or unconditional love, its electromagnetic field becomes coherent. This coherence radiates outward and begins to influence the space around you. Jesus lived in this state continuously. This is why his presence alone created transformation. It was not persuasion, it was resonance. When you access elevated love, your physiology shifts. Your nervous system calms, your breath deepens, your thoughts become quieter. You move out of survival and into creation. The field becomes more responsive because your energy becomes more ordered. Coherence is what the quantum field responds to. And love is the emotion that produces the highest coherence available to the human nervous system. This is why Jesus consistently returned to love as the foundation of everything. Not because it sounds beautiful, but because it is the highest frequency a human can embody. It is the emotional signature that dissolves fear, neutralizes resistance, and opens the door to possibility. When Jesus healed, he did so through love. When he taught from love. When he faced resistance, betrayal, and suffering, he stayed in love. This is what allowed him to operate from the God state rather than the ego state. Love reorganizes probability because it stabilizes your identity. When you are in elevated love, you cannot access the frequencies of fear, doubt, limitation, or separation. Those frequencies lose their power. Your inner world becomes ordered, and your outer world begins to reflect that order. You stop reacting. You start creating. You stop constricting. You start expanding. And the quantum field expands with you. Love is not passive. It is transformative. It repairs the fracture between your mind and your heart. It dissolves the illusion of separation between you and the field. It brings you into alignment with the Christ state, the state where the world around you responds to the coherence within you. Jesus demonstrated this over and over. He did not create from tension. He created from compassion. He did not act from fear. He acted from alignment. When you allow elevated love to rise in you, you are not becoming sentimental. You are becoming powerful. You are entering a state where your frequency is strong enough to collapse possibility into form. You are stepping into the same field Jesus accessed, the same coherence he embodied, the same frequency that allows miracles to unfold naturally. Love is not the effect, it is the cause. It is the mechanism. It is the technology of consciousness that aligns you with the deepest truth of who you are. Why humanity misunderstood Christ. For 2,000 years, humanity tried to understand Christ through the mind, through doctrine, through tradition, through fear and reverence. But the mind cannot understand what Christ represented, because the mind sees separation, and Christ spoke only from unity. The mind searches for rules, and Christ spoke from freedom. The mind looks outward, and Christ pointed inward. This is why his message was preserved in words, but lost in meaning. People tried to understand a state of consciousness through a lens that was never designed to perceive it. Most people saw Christ as a figure to worship, not a state to embody. They saw miracles as supernatural exceptions rather than demonstrations of natural law. They saw his identity as unreachable instead of universal. Religion turned his teachings into commandments, but he was describing frequencies. He was describing alignment. He was revealing the mechanics of the inner kingdom. And when this message was filtered through fear, ego, and control, the essence was lost. The ego cannot comprehend the Christ state. It is threatened by it. The ego survives through separation, comparison, judgment, and fear. Christ dissolved all of these. He spoke as consciousness, not personality. He lived from unity, not duality. And because the world was not ready to release its identity with the small self, it misunderstood him completely. Instead of seeing him as a mirror, humanity saw him as an exception. Christ did not claim superiority. He claimed awareness. When he said, "I and the Father are one," he was speaking from the perspective of the self, the deep center of consciousness that Carl Jung identified as the true nucleus of the psyche. The self is not personal, it is universal. It is the point where your individual consciousness meets the vastness of the field. Christ lived from this center, and the world, attached to its limited identity, interpreted unity as blasphemy. This misunderstanding happened because people interpret teachings through their level of consciousness. Fear interprets love as weakness. Ego interprets unity as threat. Logic interprets the infinite as nonsense. But once your consciousness expands, the teachings of Christ suddenly make sense. You begin to see that he was not pointing to himself. He was pointing to you. He was not giving you something to believe. He was giving you a way to see, a way to be. Humanity misunderstood Christ because it looked for meaning in the external story instead of the internal transformation. It looked for heaven as a place instead of a frequency. It sought salvation as a transaction instead of awakening. It turned the path inward into rituals outward, and in doing so, it missed the entire point. The Christ state was never meant to be worshipped. It was meant to be accessed. It was meant to be remembered. It was meant to be lived as your natural state of consciousness, not by becoming something new, but by removing everything that prevents you from seeing who you already are. The Supreme Self, Jung and the Christ archetype. Carl Jung understood something that religions struggled to express. He recognized that Christ was not only a historical figure or a spiritual symbol. Christ represented the highest potential of the human psyche. The Christ archetype in Jung's view was the image of the fully integrated self. The self is the center of your consciousness and the totality of who you are beyond personality, beyond conditioning, beyond the ego. It is the point where your limited self dissolves and your true nature emerges. Jung believed that every human carries this archetype within them, not as mythology, but as psychology, as inner truth. When you observe the life and teachings of Jesus through this lens, you begin to understand that Christ was revealing what it looks like to live from the self rather than the ego. The ego reacts. The self responds. The ego fears. The self knows. The ego divides. The self unifies. Jesus operated from the self completely, and this is why his presence transformed everything around him. He was not projecting identity. He was embodying essence. The Christ archetype is the blueprint of your highest consciousness. It represents wholeness, coherence, unity between the conscious and unconscious mind. This is the process Jung called individuation. Individuation is not self-improvement. It is not becoming better. It is becoming whole. It is the journey of bringing together all parts of yourself, especially the ones you reject or hide. Jesus expressed this in spiritual language. Jung expressed it in psychological language. Both were pointing to the same inner transformation. You cannot access the Christ state without integrating your shadow. Your shadow is not evil. It is simply the parts of you have denied. Fear, insecurity, anger, shame, and pain become shadows when you refuse to face them. When you repress them, they control you from the unconscious. But when you bring them into awareness, they lose their power. This process is the same purification Jesus spoke about. It is not about morality. It is about clarity. It is about dissolving fragmentation so the self can lead. When you integrate your shadow, something extraordinary happens. Your inner world becomes unified. Your emotional energy becomes stable. Your perception expands. The field becomes more responsive because coherence rises within you. Jung believed that the self communicates through intuition, synchronicity, and a deep sense of inner knowing. These are the same signs people associate with spiritual awakening. And they are the same signs that followed Christ everywhere he went. The Christ archetype is not an external savior. It is your original state. It is the part of you that remembers your connection with the field. The part that knows you are more than matter. The part that feels the unity behind all things. When Jesus said, "You will do the works I do, and even greater," he was not exaggerating. He was speaking from the truth that the self is universal. And once you access it fully, you operate from the same consciousness he demonstrated. Jung revealed the psychological framework. Jesus revealed the spiritual path. Together, they point to the same discovery, that the Christ within you is not symbolic. It is the deepest level of your being waiting to be realized. The physics of the word, why reality responded when Christ spoke. When Jesus spoke, reality shifted. Not because his words carried magical properties, but because his words were aligned with a frequency strong enough to command the quantum field. In the ancient world, people described this as authority. In the language of consciousness, it was coherence. In the language of physics, it was vibration. Christ understood that the spoken word is not sound alone. The word is intention expressed through frequency. It is identity expressed through vibration. And when identity is aligned with the self, the word becomes creative force. Modern physics confirms that everything vibrates. Every atom, every particle, every field. And vibration responds to vibration. When Jesus spoke, he was not hoping something would happen. He was not asking the universe to intervene. He was speaking from a state where his inner frequency matched the outcome he declared. His words were the final expression of an internal reality that was already complete. This is why his statements were direct and simple. Be healed, rise, peace, be still. They were not requests. They were declarations from coherence. Words collapse probability when they come from alignment. When your heart and mind are coherent, your voice carries a different resonance. The electromagnetic field of your heart infuses your intention with stability. Your nervous system supports the vibration you are transmitting. You speak from a frequency that is not fractured by fear or doubt. This is why your body reacts instantly to your own words when they come from truth. And why the world reacts when your alignment is strong enough. The ego speaks through noise. The self speaks through clarity. The ego uses words to control. The self uses words to create. Jesus spoke from the self, Every word he used carried the vibration of unity, identity, and completion. In that state, language becomes a bridge between the invisible and the visible. It becomes the mechanism through which the inner kingdom expresses itself in the physical world. You experience this in your own life more often than you realize. When someone speaks from fear, you feel it in your body. When someone speaks from inner certainty, you feel that too. Words transmit frequency before they transmit meaning. This is why affirmations often fail. If your internal state contradicts your words, the field does not respond. But when your identity aligns with what you speak, your words become instructions to the universe. This was the secret behind the statements of Jesus. He spoke from the I am. He spoke from unity with the field. He spoke from a state where his intention, emotion, and identity were a single frequency. And the quantum field responded instantly. Not because he was divine and you are not, but because he was aligned and you are learning to align. When you speak from coherence, you access the same mechanism. Your words begin to shape reality because they carry the vibration of your true identity. They stop being expressions of desire and become expressions of being. This is the moment when language becomes creation and your voice becomes the channel of the field within you. Divine neutrality. How the Christ state silences the ego. There is a state of consciousness where creation becomes effortless. A state where you no longer push, force, or struggle to make reality bend. A state where the mind becomes quiet, the heart becomes still, and the ego loses its grip. This state is what Jesus embodied. It is the state of divine neutrality. Neutrality is not indifference. It is not passivity. It is the absence of inner resistance. It is the pure awareness that allows the field to reorganize without interference from fear, doubt, or emotional turbulence. The ego lives in constant reaction. It divides everything into good and bad, success and failure, past and future. It clings to what it desires and resists what it fears. This constant contraction creates incoherence. And incoherence blocks the quantum field from responding clearly to you. Jesus, however, operated from a state beyond ego. A state beyond the dualities of the world. He called it the kingdom. In psychological language, Jung called it the self. In quantum language, you could call it coherence. Divine neutrality is the moment when you are not pulled by fear or pushed by desire. You stand in the center of yourself, unshaken. In this state, the mind becomes silent because it has nothing to defend. The heart becomes still because it has nothing to fear. The body relaxes because it is no longer preparing for threat. And the field becomes responsive because your signal becomes clear. This is why Jesus could speak with such authority. He did not speak from reaction, he spoke from center, from neutrality, from the unbroken connection with the field. When you operate from neutrality, you stop collapsing the wrong probabilities with your worry. You stop projecting conflicting frequencies. You stop broadcasting signals of lack. Instead, you allow the field to move without distortion. Neutrality is a state of pure openness. It is the point where you are no longer trying to control the outcome. You become the observer who allows possibility to unfold. And this allowing is not weakness, it is power. Because the field responds instantly to coherence, and coherence emerges when the ego is silent. The ego is loud, the self whispers. And the Christ state is complete silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of alignment. The silence where your inner world becomes so ordered that reality has no choice but to mirror it. In divine neutrality, you become untouchable. Not because you dominate the world, but because the world can no longer dominate your internal state. You rise above circumstance. You rise above emotion. You rise above thought. And from this elevated ground, your intention carries weight. Your presence carries frequency. Your being carries power. Jesus demonstrated this in every step, every word, every gesture. He did not react to the world. He revealed it. He did not fear the storm. He spoke from the center of the field. When you enter divine neutrality, you step into the same state. You begin to create from alignment rather than effort. And the field responds to you naturally, effortlessly, immediately. How to access the Christ consciousness in practice. Accessing the Christ state is not about adopting a belief. It is not about following a doctrine or memorizing spiritual concepts. It is about entering a frequency, a state of coherence. A level of presence where your mind, heart, and identity operate in harmony. The path to this state is simple, but it requires awareness. It requires willingness. It requires a shift from doing to being. When you understand this, you realize that Christ was not giving instructions. He was giving demonstrations. The first step is presence. Not thinking about presence, not observing presence, but becoming fully immersed in the now. Jesus operated from timeless awareness. He was not trapped in the past or anxious about the future. He lived from the eternal moment where the field is most responsive. When you quiet the mind and bring your attention into the present, your energy rises. Your nervous system shifts. Your frequency becomes available to the field. Presence is the doorway. The second step is breath. Your breath is the bridge between the physical and the energetic. When you breathe slowly and deeply, you send a message to your body that it is safe. Safety creates coherence. Coherence allows the heart and brain to synchronize. This synchronization elevates your frequency. When the breath is steady, the field responds to you with greater clarity. Jesus breathed from a calm center. You can feel this in every teaching, every gesture, every moment of his life. The third step is identity. You cannot access the Christ state while holding on to the identity of limitation. The ego says you are separate. The Christ state says you are connected. The ego says you are small. The Christ state says you are source. When you begin to shift your identity from the conditioned self to the aware self, your frequency changes. The statement, "I am," becomes more than words. It becomes your internal signature. The fourth step is elevated emotion. Gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, and unconditional love are not emotional preferences. They are energetic technologies. They expand your field. They dissolve incoherence. They lift your vibration to a level where the Christ frequency can enter you more fully. Jesus lived from these states constantly. They were not moral ideals. They were states of power. The fifth step is silence. True silence. The silence that comes when the ego stops fighting for attention and the self comes forward. In silence, you feel the presence of the field. In silence, intuition rises. In silence, the Christ state becomes real. This silence is not empty. It is filled with awareness. It is the space where the field can speak through you. The final step is surrender, not giving up, giving in. Allowing the field to move without resistance. Jesus described this as aligning with the will of the Father, but what he was describing was alignment with the greater intelligence of consciousness. When you surrender the ego's need to control, you open the door to the Christ state. You open the door to coherence. You open the door to the field. You do not become Christ. You remember the Christ within you. And once you access this state, even for a moment, something inside you recognizes it as your natural home. You are the extension of the field Christ revealed. When you reach this point, something inside you begins to shift. You no longer see Christ as a distant figure. You no longer see his life as a story that happened long ago. You begin to recognize that everything he demonstrated was a reflection of a deeper truth about you. He was not trying to show you a power you do not have. He was trying to awaken the power you forgot. He was not pointing to himself as the exception. He was pointing to the state of consciousness that is possible for every human being. The more you understand the quantum field, the more his teachings make sense. The more you explore your inner world, the more his words reveal their true meaning. When he said the kingdom is within you, he was describing the same field physics now studies. When he spoke about becoming one with the Father, he was describing unity consciousness. When he told his followers they would do greater works, he was not offering encouragement. He was stating fact. The Christ state is not something you look at. It is something you step into. As you integrate these truths, you begin to feel a quiet confidence rising in you. A sense of inner stability that does not depend on what you see outside. You begin to feel connected to something larger than your thoughts, larger than your emotions, larger than the identity you once protected. You start to sense the field moving with you. You start to notice synchronicities that confirm your alignment. You start to feel the presence of a deeper intelligence guiding your steps. This is not imagination, this is coherence. The Christ state is not dramatic. It is not explosive. It is subtle, steady, and unmistakably powerful. It grows in silence. It expands in presence. It strengthens each time you choose awareness over reaction, compassion over fear, coherence over chaos. And as this state stabilizes inside you, your life begins to shift in ways that feel both natural and extraordinary. You stop trying to control outcomes. You stop being defined by old narratives. You stop questioning your worth. You begin creating from identity instead of desperation. You stand in the world differently. You breathe differently. You think differently. You love differently. You speak differently. And reality responds because your frequency is no longer fractured. You have returned to the center. You have returned to the inner kingdom. You have returned to the field that Christ lived from. You begin to understand what he meant when he said, "You are the light of the world." You begin to feel that light moving through you, not as metaphor, but as frequency. Christ did not come to replace your power. He came to remind you of it. He did not come to show you what you cannot reach. He came to show you what you were created to become. When you align with the self, when you enter presence, when you live from coherence, you step into the same field he revealed. You become an extension of the intelligence that shapes reality. And from this state, creation is no longer effort. It is expression. The Christ state is not outside you. It is your deepest truth. And now you are remembering it. If this message resonated with you, subscribe now to stay connected with the energy that awakens you. Like this video to anchor this frequency in your field. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a transmission that your spirit needs. And comment below, "I am the frequency." Let the universe hear your voice. You're not here by chance. You're here to rise and remember who you truly are.